In this lesson, we'll discuss how the layer stack works. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the head texture set. So far, we've been painting on layer 1. Now these layers are very similar to Photoshop layers. Anything painted above this layer will sit on top. We can create a new layer by clicking on the Add Layer button, and a new layer will be created. Let's change the material that we're going to paint to a purple base color, and I'll just disable all the other channels except for roughness and base color. Now if I paint here on top of the other layer, it'll overlap the one underneath. I can also drag the bottom one to the top of the stack, or drag it back down to the bottom. Now it's always a good idea to keep your layer stack organized, so if you want to rename a layer, simply double click on it and name it appropriately. I'll name this top. Clicking on the icon here will toggle the visibility of the layer. If I want to delete the layer, I can simply hit the garbage can icon. Now this is quite straightforward if you're coming from a Photoshop background. Now let's go ahead and focus on this 100 value. Now this controls the opacity of the layer, so I can lower the opacity. And as you can see in the viewport, the layer is starting to fade as the opacity drops, as you'd expect. Now it looks like we completely removed the layer now that it sits at 0, but we can still see some odd surface variations. When isolating the channels, we can notice that the base color has disappeared, but the metallic and roughness values are still present. Now this is because we're working again in a full material. And if you look here on the drop down, the parameters that I'm adjusting are actually only for that selected channel. So right now I only change the opacity for the base color. If I choose to drop down and select the roughness, you can see that the opacity is still sitting at 100. Now with the roughness channel viewed in the viewport, I can slide the opacity down, and you'll notice that it's actually affecting the roughness channel's opacity. So basically, after you lay down a paint stroke, you can go back into the layer stack and individually adjust each separate channel on its own. This not only works with the opacity, but you also have different blend modes that can be used per channel. Now let's go back and bring this up to 100, and I'll switch back to the base color and also change this opacity to 100. And I'll hit M to go back to material mode. So just for example of how this is used, I'll create a new layer on top. I'll change my material settings to a base color of near white and a roughness to 0.5. I'll just brush on top of these existing materials again, and I'll solo mode to the base color. And what I can do now is change the base color blend mode to, say, subtract, which will give me this effect. I'll hit C to toggle to the roughness channel. Now if I switch over to the roughness, I can change the blend mode here to linear dodge, which will give us this effect. This allows you to have a lot of flexibility and control for each of the channels after paint has been laid down, which is great if you want to tweak channels individually from one another. I'll just hit M to go back to material mode, and as a habit, I always tend to switch back to base color when I'm done any adjustments. Now in the next lesson, we'll further explore the brush types and parameters.